You are listening to Productivity Straight Talk with your host, Amber De La Garza. Amber is a sought-after productivity coach, trainer, speaker, and writer who gives entrepreneurs the straight talk on personal productivity. No BS, fluff, or overused jargon. Just actionable strategies to get results and succeed in business. And here is your host, Amber De La Garza, the Productivity Specialist.
Welcome, and thank you for listening to Productivity Straight Talk. Today is episode 63, live from my summer travels, how to be productive on the road. If you are an entrepreneur or business owner who wants to get the most out of your business and life, then you're in the right place, and I'm so glad you've joined me. My goal today is for you to get a sneak peek behind the scenes of how I stay productive while traveling so that you can be more productive on your next trip. I'm looking forward to bringing this episode to you because you're going to see some behind the scenes in real time. So what happened was I had a different episode scheduled for this week, but I was truly inspired by, trying to be productive on the road and all that entails. So I put together this episode, and here's what you'll discover. My top 7 tips for staying productive on the road, how establishing clear expectations can make or break your trip, why what you do before your trip determines your productivity on it, how to best deal with your surprise travel companion, and so much more. So let's dive right in and get straight to it. So first, I want to just set the landscape here and the background story. For those of you that have been listening for a while, you know that I hired a nanny, and I had every intentions of my nanny working through this summer. However, she's got grandchildren in another state, and it was really important to her to visit them. And I had already had 2 work conferences scheduled. So I was going to New York to work with my coach for 3 days. And then I was going to Philadelphia to go to Podcast Movement. And when my nanny told me she wanted to take 6 weeks off, I was in solution mode because I had every intention of her helping out with my son while I was on those 2 trips. And just to give you a little more context to the story, when I asked my son to create a bucket list of things that he wanted to do this summer, his only thing on the bucket list was to visit family and to see people that he doesn't get to see during the school year because we don't have time. Now, I tell you that because it really, really had touched my heart. Like, I was thinking, I want to go to Disneyland, I want to go to a water park, I want to eat ice cream. Really, I gave him anything he wanted to do to write on this bucket list. And the only thing he had come up with was that he wanted to spend time with family. So, of course, I decided I was going to make that happen. Which brings me to creating a 3.5-week trip with my son and myself. So we started in New York City at the beginning of July for 3 days. And then we flew to Georgia, which is where I'm currently at and recording this episode. And I have my brother, my dad, extended family, cousins, aunts, uncles. And we're staying here for 11 days, and then we're going to go to Philadelphia for our last leg for a week, and my husband will meet us there to do sort of a family vacation on the front end, and then I'm going to attend Podcast Movement. So all in all, it's 3.5 weeks. And I have a lot of lessons being right smack in the middle of this, of traveling with my son while traveling on the road and still running a business and a team. And I thought that it would be really, really valuable to bring this to you in real time. Now, I've got to tell you, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs believe that it is the life to be able to travel and work and business just goes on its own. And I got to tell you, while for the most part, that is true and could be certainly true, there's a lot of things that you need to do to make sure that you are your most productive self. Now, in this episode, you'll hear that I'm going to be talking to you about being productive while traveling. And that's with the assumption that you even want to work while you travel, because there is a place and time for definitely traveling and no work at all. So let me also let you in on when I'm working, when I'm not working, and how I've balanced those types of things. When I was in New York for 3 days to be working with my coach, Todd Herman, I didn't want to work other than the conference. So I wasn't checking emails. I wasn't interacting with my staff. I really didn't do anything. Everything was already pre-done, emails pre-scheduled, podcasts taken care of. I knew I was going to be having really, really long days. And so planning well for that actually served me well because every day we were there was 15-hour plus days. You get up, you eat breakfast, you travel to the location, you're in training for 8 hours, and then you're networking and having dinners afterwards. So that worked really well. I knew I was going to be, lack of a better word, off the grid, which in context of where I'm at right now, I was totally not off the grid in New York City. Then I flew to Georgia, and I'm in southern Georgia. To give you some context, is like it's 2 hours south of Atlanta. And like my extended family, my aunt, they live in a town called Pineview, Georgia, with a population of 502. So everywhere is farmland, everywhere is country, and it's absolutely beautiful. What I didn't do is ask my dad if he had internet. It was a really, really bad assumption. I honestly don't know anyone that doesn't have internet, and I just didn't even think to ask. And this trip, while being in Georgia, because it's extended over 11 days, I knew that I was going to have specific times that I needed to work and catch up with my team and, well, record this podcast. And so because I didn't ask that question, what has happened is I have actually had to travel an hour to my aunt's house each time I needed to work. But because I planned well and I wasn't trying to work every day, that I had only scheduled time out specific days that I was going to work, this has worked really, really well. So to give you a little insight into, I was here from Wednesday night of last week all the way to today, which is Wednesday that I'm recording. Yesterday was my work day, and I had explained to everybody before I ever came that I was going to be unavailable because I have a lot of family that's looking forward to seeing me and scheduling stuff. And yesterday I worked a little over 12 hours. I did 9 back-to-back coaching sessions. I met with 2 of my staff members for a total of 3 hours, and I knew that I wanted to batch all of my work into one long day so that I had more flexibility and freedom all the other days. Now today it is 4 a.m. Wednesday morning, and I'm sitting in my dad's car recording this podcast because after yesterday, and I had realized I really, really wanted to change out the episode. So I worked on rewriting that yesterday and bringing this episode to you. I needed to record this morning so that my team can still do everything they need to do to now release this on Monday. And what happened is I have plans, right? Because this wasn't a scheduled work day. So now we're going to the water park today. So anyways, this will all come out in the lessons, but it's about having boundaries, clear expectations, finding the time while traveling and making this work. Okay, so now you can see I have not been working. It's not like I've been on my email. It's not like I've been working every single day. I really, really batched out some specific time. Now, prior to yesterday, I had also carved out half of Monday to work. And that was so that I could get caught up on processing my email, seeing what my team had for me so that I showed up to those meetings super prepared, and really getting prepped for my coaching for my clients. So I have had times to work, but I've also had a lot of time and flexibility to have freedom time where I really, really wasn't thinking of work. Now, after I record this podcast, I'm done for the rest of my trip until I hit Philadelphia. When I hit Philadelphia, I'm going to do 3 days with my husband and my son. And then I scheduled a VIP day to create a brand new keynote and workshop with Carol Cox. And for those of you that have listened to that episode, she's Speaking Your Brand podcast, and she is an amazing speaking coach. And she's going to help me create a new keynote from scratch. Then the next day is podcast movement, and the next day and the next day. So I've squeezed in a VIP day, a family vacation, a trip to visit with extended family, and then also 3 days of coaching with my coach. So in a nutshell, I would say it's been a very productive trip. But how do you actually get the work done? How do you actually prepare so that you can take that much time off and or stay in touch with your team as you're going? So like I said, this is assuming that you even want to be in contact with the world while you travel. There is a time and place that I highly recommend that you go off the grid and you are inaccessible. But even the tips I'm going to share with you, a lot of these are going to let you do that in a more effective way so that you're not stressed out and thinking of where you should be, what you should have your attention on, and be fully present in your vacation. And then also allowing you to still grow your business and maintain the momentum that you had in your business previously to traveling. This brings me to tip number 1, which is planning. Planning when and how you're going to work. I highly recommend that you batch your work together so that you have the most time available to be free and flexible and going with the flow on your vacation. I know for me on my vacations that the unplanned days are the best days. And that definitely works when you're on vacation and you just want to see things or do things or be available for family and friends. But I do believe that there is a time and place to plan, and that is when you're going to get the work done. Had I not planned specific days to do my work, there was plenty of things to do and plenty of family to visit that would have taken all of that time. So by planning ahead of time, it was allowing me to really communicate to others when I was available and when I wasn't. And I'll go deeper into that tip in a moment. Tip number 2 is communicating your whereabouts, which exactly what I'm talking about. So first you have to have the plan, and then you've got to communicate your whereabouts to everybody. This first started with communicating my whereabouts to my clients. I communicated to them that I was going to be away for 3.5 weeks and that I had specific days on my trip that I was going to be doing coaching. So I asked each of them to move their coaching slot time to this specific day, which is Tuesday. And then I also have another coaching day right when I come back, and I have another coaching day right before I left. So I was able to move everybody around so that they got all their coaching sessions for the month, but asked them to be really flexible so that I can enjoy my trip with my family. The other way that I communicated my whereabouts was with my employees. I was very, very clear about when I would be available, how I would be able to be reached, or rather, when I would not be able to be reached. I was really clear about communicating my expectations for the projects and things that they were going to be doing while I was gone. I also communicated with my family. So when I came out here, obviously I'm on vacation, but I had to communicate to them that I had very specific times that I had to get work done. And so by setting those boundaries and communicating that to them, they were on board and completely supportive. My brother, my aunt, my uncle, my dad, even my son knew what days mom needed to be working and unavailable. So what I did was really set things up for not awkward conversations like, I'm sorry, I can't go here, I can't do that, or I'm unavailable. So tip number 2 was communicating my whereabouts with everybody that would be affected. Tip number 3 is optimize your environment. Now, I think this is really important because my environment plays a huge role on my productivity. My office is set up a certain way. It's organized. I have everything at my fingertips. And that's just not the case when you're working on the road. It was really important for me to set up specific places that I was going to be working. The place that I chose to work was my aunt's house. I asked for a quiet room in the back of the house where I wouldn't be interrupted. I'd be out of everybody's way. And I literally set it up. I set up my mic and I set up my laptop and I set up my notebook that I take notes in. And I really set up my own travel office to optimize my productivity while being on the road. I also think that it is worth noting that the way that you work and you're productive and your environment on the road is obviously much, much different than when you're in your office. In this sense, I really think that you need to find a place that is conducive for you getting your work done. For me and the type of work that I needed, I really needed quiet time because I was on conference calls most of the day, or I was on with my team. And then the previous day, it was really just getting through a ton of information to get through processing my emails. And I didn't want to do that in a coffee shop. I really wanted some quiet time. But for you, it might be finding a coffee shop or sitting by the pool or next to the lake. You can really set yourself up for anywhere. Just know that you need to put some thought into your environment while you're working on the road. Tip number 4 is back up and send up. When you travel, you honestly don't know what's going to happen. My backpack could have been stolen. I could have had an issue with my carry-on. I could have dropped my laptop. Honestly, in fact, someone at the conference that I was at in New York, the workshop that I was at in New York, her laptop got stolen right out of her backpack at her hotel lobby. I really, really think that having everything backed up and sending it up to the cloud is the best way to ensure you're being most productive. Because for her, she handled it so amazing. There's so many good nuggets in here. I actually went to lunch with her the next day after this happened. And we had paid a lot of money to be at this event. We had invested a lot of time traveling to New York. And she was determined to not let this ruin her day. she was telling me, she's like, yeah, I could have really got upset about it. But honestly, I just lost the machine because I have everything backed up to the cloud. And so what she told me is she was going to use TaskRabbit. It's an outsourcing app where you can have people run errands for you to go pick her up a new laptop and bring it to her. And then she's going to sync it to the cloud and she'd be online and ready to work by the end of the day. The ability to have access to everything you need at your fingertips, no matter what device you're on, or even if you have to get a new device, I think will set you up for success while traveling. Number 5 is utilize checklists. Now, you guys are going to hear a little bit about me, but as organized and prepared I am naturally by personality, it stresses me out to pack for a trip. And then have me pack for a trip where I'm going to 3 or 4 different places for 3.5 weeks with my son. The idea of packing for this trip, talk about procrastination setting in. And there's a tip right there. Procrastination often sets in on things that we personally don't feel that we're prepared for, where there's avoidance, where we lack confidence. And I honestly would always procrastinate on packing. If I had a flight the next morning, you'll see me up till 2 in the morning packing. And this time that was not the case. I utilize checklists. Now, I generally use checklists, but I really use checklists. And what I did was I had a standard checklist of things that I knew that I wanted to pack. And then I had a little notes app on my phone that anytime I thought of something I wanted to take on the trip, I added to the notes app throughout the previous week. And so when it was time to pack, I just went down my checklist and then I went down the app list that I was creating of random things that I wanted to make sure I kept. So what that did was create a lot more flow and allow me to pack and ensure that I wasn't missing anything. I am about 10 days into my trip right now, and I can assure you I didn't miss a thing. And in fact, I probably packed too much. Definitely good lessons there. So utilize checklists. You can also utilize a checklist to make sure that you're bringing everything you need for your work stuff. I utilize checklists when I go on work trips, specifically for speaking. I make sure I have everything that I need, my clicker, my laptop, the charger, anything that I could possibly need to ensure that my trip while traveling for business is always smooth. All right. Tip number 6 is relaying boundaries clearly and communicating playtimes versus work times. Now, I referenced this a little bit in communicating your whereabouts, but I really thought that this needed its own tip because we often talk about having boundaries in our business and communicating this with our family, even when we're working at home or even when you have a job outside of the home. You have to set expectations of when it's work time and when it's playtime. I have certainly done this and I have found it to be tremendously valuable because I had to communicate to my son that it was work time when we were in New York. And so for him, he's 8 years old. He literally said, okay, Mom, I have my work hat on. And then when we were going to Georgia, he said, I have my chill hat on. And when we go to Philadelphia, he said he's going to have his adventure hat on because we're going to play tourist and see all the sights. So he's going to be Adventure Eric. It really allowed him to know what to expect for this trip because I clearly communicated that with him. Now, for my husband, likewise, him coming and meeting me in Philadelphia, we're going to be there for just under a week, about 6 days. And many of the days I'm going to be unavailable to him. So he's coming out for a vacation and we're going to make the most out of our 3 days together prior to my working on my VIP day and then the conference. But he has his own plans to spend some quality time with Eric in Philadelphia. So again, this by communicating ahead of time has got everybody on the same page. Now, while I am in Georgia, my dad and brother actually own a painting business. So they understand having to work. And they have been so generous and actually took the whole time off that I was here and haven't worked. And so a little bit of guilt set in because they really, in their business, there's no automation. So if they're not working, they're not making money. But they had chosen to set this time aside and be available to hang out the whole time I'm here. When I communicated that there was some days that I had to work, I feel like it gave them permission to also work if they needed to. Everybody was fine. There was more than enough time to hang out with each other. So I have to tell you, communicating boundaries clearly has been probably my number one success tip in making sure that I got what I needed to keep my business moving forward while still having tons of time to enjoy my trip. Okay, this brings me to our last tip, which is tip number 7. Setting realistic expectations of how much you can actually get done. Because here's the deal. I think that we get optimistic. In my head, I think I'm going to read a ton of books and I'm going to have all this thinking time to create these new amazing things in my business. I think I'm going to have more than enough time to be checking my email and recording podcasts. But I have, from previous experiences, realized that when I'm somewhere, I just really want to enjoy and be present in the location that I'm traveling. So I have gotten more and more realistic with what's possible. And then if the opportunity arises that I have some thinking time or I have time to listen to an audiobook and go for a walk, those types of things I have found actually happen more frequently when I let them happen than when I expect them to happen. And I think that this also helps with your mindset of enjoying your trip, because if you expect that you're going to read X amount of books or you're going to have time to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and that's not happening, then your mind is preoccupied there and not really open to enjoying the moment of what's going on right now. Now, I also say setting realistic expectations, and this has a lot to do with setting clear boundaries and communicating with yourself. So we can roll up some of the previous tips into this. Like, you need to clearly communicate with yourself what it is that you actually want to get done, what it is that you'll actually get done on a working trip. And inevitably, Murphy is always visiting. So Murphy's Law, he's your surprise companion on any trip. And Murphy has actually visited me a couple times on this trip already. A couple days into being in Georgia, my debit card to my checking account got shut down due to fraud. And they had mailed the card to my home, and I'm not going to be home, and I don't see my husband for another week. So I actually have absolutely no access to my money because where I'm at, there's no Wells Fargo. And we would have to drive, I think, like an hour and a half to go find a Wells Fargo. So we're making it work. Also, I had to spend some time rebooking my husband's flight because I got here on Wednesday night, and on Friday I woke up and I got an email saying that it was time for my husband to check in for his trip. And I'm like, that's weird. And I kept going through my emails, and then I was like, why would they send that a week in advance? So I go back and look at it, and lo and behold, I literally scheduled him to go to Philadelphia a whole week early. So I called, I waited on hold, and then they said, I'll have to call you back in an hour and a half because there was such a hold period, all to find out that the fee to change it was more than what I paid for the flight. I had to walk away from that ticket, scramble, get him on another flight this Friday, which is when he was supposed to be, this upcoming Friday, which is when he was supposed to leave, and take care of that and communicate that. And honestly, I could probably tell you about countless other things that have kind of happened. And all of them, I just rolled with it. They're unexpected. And by the way, these things don't just happen while on vacation. I think I have a better attitude about them on vacation because I'm just chill. But really, Murphy's Law is around us all the time when we're trying to work. You'll find it when you're trying to hit up against a deadline or a project. Things always happen. And so you have to really set good expectations, or maybe more accurate expectations. It's not a good or a bad thing, but being really accurate with what it is that you think you can focus on and accomplish during your trip. Okay, guys, that was my top 7 tips for traveling in real time, behind the scenes, and how I feel I have truly been able to enjoy my trip while also staying productive on the road. I have really enjoyed having you listen to this episode of Productivity Straight Talk, but I need to be straight with you. No change, no change. Without taking action, nothing will change for you or your business. So based on what you learned today, what will you take action on? Now, I get it. This episode might not be for you right now if you're not traveling, but my guess is that you have something on the books where you want to travel. Or you never thought about the opportunity to travel while still getting some work done. And how did you do that? Let me let you in on a little secret. The tips that I shared with you today about how to be most productive while traveling, they also work when you're not traveling. Planning always helps you be more productive. Communicating your boundaries always helps you. Having checklists always helps you. These tips here are not just for when you're traveling. I hope you took away some good nuggets that you can take action on, or just invite you to maybe think of the way that you're doing things a little bit differently. I would love to go deeper on this topic with you and hear what your takeaways were, or even yet tell me where you're traveling this summer. Let me in on where are you traveling at and where are you getting your work done at, because I think that summer is synonymous for travels. And this really is a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs that want to go on family vacations and they want to enjoy the time off with their family, but are challenged with how do I get the work done? I would love for you to join me on the inside. If you're not already a Productivity Straight Talk Insider, you can join us by going to productivitycommunity.com. You can join us for free. We have a private Facebook group where we share these types of things. And if you're already a Productivity Straight Talk Insider, jump in and let me know where you're traveling this summer and where are you finding that you can get your work done. Okay, so before we leave, I just want to thank you so much. There are so many reviews that are coming in, and you have been sharing Productivity Straight Talk with other entrepreneurs, and I can't thank you enough. You're not just sharing information, you're giving them the gift of improved productivity and maximize profits. And in this episode, I have a really special thank you to go out to Smile Super Sam, who recently said, "What I love about Amber's podcast is the actionable strategies and tips. You identify immediately with the content and find ways you can apply them to your struggles. Also, I'm a fan of the way she delivers her speech." Thank you so much, Smile Super Sam, for letting me know how Productivity Straight Talk is helping you. So that's my Straight Talk for today. And until next time, have a productive week.